Welcome to Horrors, a channel dedicated to horror movies. Today we are taking a look at a movie from 2012 called House at the End of the Street, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Max Thieriot. The movie starts by showing us a house that appears to be in a storm with constant bright flashes, which give us the impression that things aren't good, only for a second later, a big blue eye to appear next to the house. That's when we realize that this is just a snow globe, and it's being held by what appears to be a young girl, who for some reason have wrist restraints which are usually used to restrain violent patients to the bed. The constant flashes and flickering we see suggests that this young girl is quite possibly having a psychotic episode. Upon accidentally pushing a lamp to the ground, the parents of the girl wake up, and the mother decides to see what's happening. That's when she sees that it's her daughter Carrie Anne that has pushed the lamp to the ground and tells her to go back to bed, whilst leaning forward to pick up the lamp. That's when the daughter hits her in the head with a hammer, repeatedly, over and over. The father hears something, and appears to finally be concerned. That's when the daughter, Carrie Anne, opens the door and rushes in, attacking the father. All we can hear is the father's scream and violent noises. We see a bunch of feathers covered in blood falling to the ground, perhaps symbolizing the loss of innocence. Once the ruckus is over, we see Carrie Anne slowly walking away from the bed, and few seconds later we see her running away outside in the storm. The story continues 4 years later. We are shown Sarah Cassidy and her 17-year-old daughter Alyssa, who are just moving in from Chicago. While admiring the backyard view, they comment on the neighbors, the Jacobsons' house, which is fairly close. It appears that the reason they chose the house they are in is because the rent was really low due to the double murder that had happened in the neighbor's house. Alyssa jokingly says that they never got their rent cut when there were shootouts in their neighborhood, which underlines how important the image is for such small communities. Later we see Alyssa walking around in the woods when she finds what appears to be blankets, quite possibly even clothes. Later in the evening we are witness to the most horrifying part of the movie. Alyssa serves spaghetti with bread. At that point I was expecting to hear Freddy Krueger's laugh, only to realize that I'm in a nightmare, but unfortunately everything was real. There's obvious small conflict between the daughter and the mother in regards to the father, but the night ends smoothly. In the middle of the night Sarah gets up to take a look out the window, only to see that in the supposedly abandoned neighbor's house, a light is suddenly turned on. The next day in a gathering of the local families, Sarah and Alyssa are introduced to the neighbors. Sarah asks if someone lives in the Jacobsons' house, and that's when she finds out that Ryan Jacobson, the son of the murdered couple, lives there. Sarah appears to be a bit distressed over this news, but when asked if that's a problem, she says that it's not. Meanwhile Alyssa is introduced to Tyler, the neighbor's good-looking son. The mother is really proud that he and his buddies did a fundraiser and collected $1,000 for a famine relief program that's supposed to help Africa or Tibet, or whatever according to her words. It again underlines how in these communities the image is really important, while at the same time it also shows how much they don't really care about the causes and how much actual help they give. It's all about raising their personal image whilst putting minimal effort. Throughout the dinner we can hear how much the neighbors are unhappy with Ryan Jacobson's presence. They're happy that he is keeping to himself, but at the same time jokingly one of the neighbors suggests that they should burn that house, because it lowers the value of all their houses. In fact, they've tried to buy the house, tear down the house and donate the land to the state park, but Ryan has refused. When Alyssa asks what really happened to the house and why Ryan is around now, that's when we find out that Carrie Anne, the daughter, killed the parents and ran away while Ryan was living with his aunt upstate. Supposedly Carrie Anne drowned in the local dam, but since no one has found the body there are stories that Carrie Anne might be living in the woods. Alyssa gets really spooked because she remembers what she saw in the woods the day before that. On the way home Alyssa comments how bad their neighbors are and wonders if it's really possible for someone to be living in the woods, but the mother dismissed the idea. Right when they are in front of their house Alyssa hears a branch snapping and looks intently towards the woods, but sees nothing and heads back home, while we are shown that someone was obviously looking at them. Early the next day we can see Alyssa playing the guitar and singing on her balcony. She obviously is a really talented musician. At school Alyssa is invited by Tyler to their famine relief group. In the evening after school, upon arriving Alyssa realizes that this supposed famine relief gathering is essentially a party. Tyler explains how they are doing the whole BS famine relief so that they can put it on their college applications as community service. Throughout the evening everyone is partying, dancing, drinking. At one point Alyssa goes to one of the rooms and finds a girl who is not feeling well lying on a bed. She attempts to cover her with a blanket, but the girl suddenly gets up not feeling well, rushing into the bathroom. Tyler walks in the room and starts making advances towards Alyssa, but she isn't into him and leaves the party. Alyssa starts walking towards her home when a stranger in a car stops by and asks her if she needs a ride. She is obviously spooked and says that that's her drive, but the guy says that that's not true since he saw her moving in. That's when he introduces himself as Ryan, the neighbor that lives in the Jacobsons' houses, and he offers to give her a ride since it's about to start raining, but Alyssa refuses. Ryan drives off and it starts raining. She sees that he has stopped the car ahead on the road and gets in. While in the car she asks Ryan about his story. He explains how when he was 7 years old, he was sent away and that this house is all he has left from his parents. Ryan switches the subject to how good Alyssa's singing is. She is surprised that he can hear her from all the way from his house. We find out that back in Chicago, Alyssa was in a band. Once Alyssa is home, her mother Sarah asks her if Tyler's mom gave her a ride, but she tells her that Ryan Jacobson did. Upon finding that out, Sarah is obviously distressed and complains why she didn't ask her for a ride, but Alyssa just walks away. At the same time in the Jacobsons' house we see Ryan preparing food on a tray and taking it down a secret door which leads to a secret room. He picks the key from above the door frame and unlocks the door, walks in and turns around to lock the door, but he is all of a sudden attacked by a female. He starts shouting "Stop Carrie Anne" and tries to subdue her, but she still bites him. Eventually he pulls out a syringe and injects her with something that puts her to sleep. While she is falling asleep, he tells her that they have new neighbors. The next day at the school the drunk girl from the last night approaches Alyssa and introduces herself as Jillian. She is thankful for Alyssa tucking her in. Alyssa asks her why she is friends with these people, and she explains how she used to go out with Tyler, but he is a dick, and Alice agrees. As they are talking Jillian calls to two guys. She introduces them as her brother Jake and his best friend Robbie. Alyssa is surprised to find out that they know her. It turns out that they have googled her and offer her to join their band. Meanwhile Alyssa's mother, Sarah, is shown to ask a local police officer, Bill Weaver, about Ryan Jacobson. Seeing how she is concerned he explains how Ryan was raised by his aunt, a senile old woman. Essentially Ryan was the one taking care of her and not the other way around. She apparently died about a year ago. He explains that Ryan have had a tough life and that he has never had any problems with him, nor does anyone else for that matter, but the neighbors like to bitch about their property's values. Alyssa walks to Ryan's house. Ryan is shown to be watching some kind of site about drugs on his laptop, but switches to something else when Alyssa shows up. Upon entering Alyssa realizes that he is watching her page. He responds that he wanted to listen to more of her music, and he hopes that that's not strange. We see that he likes to stock up on a lot of junk food, and we are also shown an old baby monitor. Ryan shows the house to Alyssa. Upon entering his room, she sees a picture of the whole family. She remarks how blue Carrie Anne's eyes are. He explains how Carrie Anne was the heart of the family and how things changed after the accident. They walk into another room that's obviously a kid's room. That's when Ryan starts explaining what happened. One day while they were playing, they went outside on the swings. While they were on the swings, we are shown their parents getting high on drugs. Carrie Anne kept going higher and higher on the swing until eventually she fell off the swing. He starts explaining how after the accident she would scream and attack them all the time. Alyssa asks if that's why there are bars on the windows and he responds yes, because she never knew where she was and she constantly ran away in the woods. They were there to keep her in. After Alyssa leaves the house, we are shown how Ryan has again given sedative to Carrie Anne. Meanwhile Alyssa is having a conversation with her mother Sarah and asked what she did during the day. She tells her that she went to Ryan's house. Sarah isn't happy that Alyssa is giving so much attention to Ryan. She tells her that she knows what she's doing. She likes to save and fix people, but Alyssa gets annoyed by what's being said and leaves the room. While leaving the room the mother yells from the back that some people just can't be fixed. At the same time, we are shown that Carrie Anne is up. She is having the same flashes we saw at the beginning of the movie. Somehow, she opens the locked door and walks out. Ryan is on the second floor in his room, writing something on his laptop when he sees Carrie Anne running outside of the house towards the neighbor's house. He gets up and starts running after Carrie Anne. He keeps yelling "No Carrie Anne, no," while chasing her. Alyssa is shown talking to her mother on the phone on the second floor, and we can see through her window Carrie Anne running up to the house. Alyssa keeps doing small chores around the house, while Carrie Anne continues to run around the house. At one point we hear a knock on a door, and Alyssa goes to check. Upon opening the door there is no one there, but Jillian suddenly shows up from behind her. Alyssa is surprised how she got in, and Jillian tells her that the door was opened. They walk back in the house. Meanwhile under the balcony we can see that Ryan has caught Carrie Anne, and with his hand across her mouth he was restraining her. The next day everything seems perfectly normal. Alyssa meets up with Jillian's brother and his friend, and joins their band. In the evening Sarah surprised her daughter by having Ryan over for dinner. Throughout the dinner Ryan explains stuff about his life and how he wants to be a psychiatrist. Seeing her mom's bad behavior throughout the dinner, Alyssa throws a remark that her mother used to go to a psychiatrist for a long time after she broke up with her dad. The dinner continues. Finally, near the end the mother breaks all pretenses and tells the reason why she invited Ryan over, and that's because she wants to make it clear that she is fine with having Ryan as a friend, but she forbids them from being alone in his house or their house, if she isn't around. Ryan agrees to the request and tries to downplay it, but he is obviously upset from what had just happened. After Ryan leaves Alyssa and Sarah have a fight. The next day we are shown Sarah complaining to the police officer Bill Weaver, saying how she didn't mean to be rude, she just doesn't want her daughter to do the same mistakes she did. Meanwhile Alyssa is shown complaining to her friend Jillian, how her mother was wasted and kept saying bad stuff. While Ryan was so nice and gentle, and we can see Jillian giving her a weird look. We are shown again Sarah explaining how she always picks the most damaged kid around and makes him into a project, and she is worried that Ryan is just part of the pattern. While Alyssa and Jillian are walking, they see Ryan and Alyssa asks him to give them a ride. After sending Jillian home they go on a walk in the woods. Ryan shows her a tree, that if you look closely, you can see a face on it. He starts saying how people don't notice all the secrets around them, even when they are in plain sight, waiting to be found. They have a tender moment and walk inside the house and start making out. While doing that through the baby monitor, Carrie Anne hears them. She manages to unlock the room, and while going out, Ryan notices her, and scared she pushes Alyssa to leave the house. Carrie Anne picks a knife and starts running towards the woods, and Ryan chases after her. The couple is shown making out in their car, when the girl suddenly sees Carrie Anne and screams. The guy doesn't buy it, but walks out to check. Meanwhile Ryan has caught Carrie Anne and is trying to restrain her, but she is making too much noise. While struggling he breaks her neck. The couple leaves and Ryan is shown crying. He puts her in the trunk of his car and drives somewhere. Sarah gets home and apologizes to Alyssa for what she has done, and explains that she is just trying to take good care of her. Meanwhile Ryan takes the body of Carrie Anne and takes it somewhere in the wilderness. After that Ryan is shown in a local diner, being down. The girl that works there tries to cheer him up. Later in the day Ryan calls Alyssa and tells her that he is sorry, and Alyssa forgives despite all the weirdness. She invites him to an event at the school, Battle of the Bands. He agrees to come. Ryan is shown to change some lock and locking it before heading to the school event. At the school ouches with Tyler and the Leds start trashing his car while he is away. When he finds out he runs back and confronts them, but there's too many of them, so he gets quite a beating. Once everyone that's attacking him calm down and move away, only Tyler is left kicking him. That's when he grabs Tyler's leg and breaks it. Tyler starts screaming while he gets up. Everyone is shocked by what just happened, but while everyone was just watching in shock, he smashed Tyler's broken leg even more. Ryan leaves and all the guys that attacked him, instead of just chasing him, decide to head towards his house. When Alyssa arrives at Ryan's house, the guys that attacked him had set the house on fire and left. She enters the house to take out the fire, and that's when her mother calls her. Her mother is worried that she might be with Ryan, but Alyssa tells her that she is at home and that she should call her as she doesn't trust her, and hangs up the phone. Her mother calls her and she picks up the phone, letting Sarah believe that she is at home as she has said. While cleaning up stuff in Ryan's house, she notices a tampons box and in the garbage bin and another cardboard box that is folded. Meanwhile Tyler's parents are outraged and want Ryan arrested right away, but the police officer tells them that he will check things, and if he finds out that their son is at fault, he will be the one getting arrested. The mother gets angry and asks why he always defends that animal. The police officer gets mad and tells her to walk away. The police officer heads towards Ryan's house and Alyssa's mom Sarah asks him to check on her daughter while he is there. While still in Ryan's house, Alyssa hears some banging from downstairs, so she goes over to check it out. It turns out that it's the washing machine. She relaxes that it's nothing dangerous, but that's when she sees that there is a trapdoor on the floor. She opens it and walks down. At the end of the corridor, she sees a door. She opened the door and gets attacked by Carrie Anne. Ryan tackles Carrie Anne and tells Alyssa to get out because she is scaring her and to wait for him upstairs. While she is leaving the room, we see the t-shirt that the girl in the diner was wearing. Meanwhile Alyssa is back up on the main floor of the house. That's when she notices that there is a blue contact lens stuck to her arm. She suddenly remembers the folded box in the garbage and takes it out, only to realize that it's from blue contact lenses. She looks for other stuff in the garbage and finds Peggy Jones' student card, the girl from the diner. Ryan confronts Alyssa and asks her to promise not to tell anyone about Carrie Anne. She does the dumbest thing ever by asking if the wallet that she found belongs to Ryan. He answers yes and asks again that she promises not to tell anyone about Carrie Anne. She finally gets it that things aren't as they look and tries to leave, saying that her mom called, but while she has her back towards Ryan, he attacks her and knocks her unconscious. We are shown that her phone has dropped under the kitchen counter. Moments later Alyssa is awake, tied to a chair. Ryan starts telling her the day the accident happened, Carrie Anne actually died. We are shown a flashback in which his father buried her instead of reporting it to the police. When Alyssa asks if Carrie Anne died, who killed Ryan's parents, but that's when Ryan starts mumbling that he can't have both her and Carrie Anne, but he needs Carrie Anne, so he decides that Alyssa will be Carrie Anne. He picks up the unconscious Peggy Jones, while Alyssa keeps screaming it to hurt her. We are shown Ryan leaving the garage without Peggy. It's safe to assume that he have killed her. Meanwhile Sarah tries to call her daughter at home, but she isn't picking up, and instead she hears Alyssa's voicemail, and that's when she realizes that Alyssa has been forwarding the calls from their home to her cell phone, so she calls the officer to tell him that, and to ask him to check on her. Ryan is back at Alyssa preparing to put blue contact lenses on her, while meanwhile Alyssa is trying to calm him down, telling him that what happened to Carrie Anne was an accident. He responds that it was his fault, and that's why they punished him, but he stopped them. The police officer finally arrives at Ryan's house and knocks on the door. Ryan opens the door and they start talking. The officer asks him what happened and he answers that all he did was fight back. That's all he ever does. The officer then tells him to stay out of trouble, and that he will make sure that things blow over. Ryan asks him if he ever gets bored playing the tough guy, but the officer ignores what he says and tells him to come to the police station the next day. He then asks if he has seen Alyssa, but Ryan answers that the last time he saw her was during the Battle of Bands. The police officers tell him that he will see him first thing in the morning and turns around to leave, but that's when he sees a wallet and gets suspicious. Once outside the house, the officer decides to call Sarah's home, and that's when he hears Alyssa's phone ring inside Ryan's house. Ryan realizes that Bill knows that she is in the house and turns off the lights and takes a knife, while Bill pulls out his gun preparing to go back inside the house. Meanwhile Alyssa is trying to get her hands free. She uses the lamp to try to burn the cloth that's being used to tie her arms. Bill is searching the house when Ryan pushes him down the stairs towards the basement, where the door to the secret room is located. Bill is injured, so Ryan is taking his time walking towards him, talking how Bill knew what really happened. We are shown again the flashback where Ryan's father buried Carrie Anne, but this time the flashback continues, and we see that Bill shows up at that moment. Ryan's father tells him that at this point he can only go along with the lie. We find out the reason Bill has been keeping the secret was because he was selling drugs to the Jacobsons family. Bill tells him that he has been protecting him over the years, but Ryan starts stabbing him repeatedly while screaming that he was just protecting himself, even though he knew what they did to him. Alyssa finally manages to untie herself as Ryan is about to get back into the room. She hits him with the door and locks the door from the outside, while proceeding to run away, but realizes that the door to the basement is locked. Meanwhile Ryan keeps trying to break the door. Alyssa goes to the dead body of Bill and reaches for his gun, but realizes that it's not there. She goes for the car and while searching for the keys, finds a box with a rag and a bottle of chloroform. Like any other normal human in that situation, she is taking her time, and of course Ryan catches up to her and uses chloroform to knock her out. How poetic. He drags her half-conscious body towards the truck of his car and puts her in his car, while meanwhile her mother Sarah arrives at the house and starts screaming and banging the door, looking for her. Alyssa slowly gets a grip only to realize that right next to her in the trunk is the dead body of Peggy. She starts kicking the back seats of the car to try to get herself out of the trunk and manages to break them and get out of the car. Meanwhile Sarah is talking with Ryan asking him if Alyssa is here because she wasn't at home, but he responds that she isn't here. That's when Alyssa breaks the glass window on a door and her mother hears it and walks past Ryan into the house. Sarah keeps calling Alyssa's name and Alyssa's responds that she needs help and that she's trapped. Sarah starts banging on the door to the basement and that's when Ryan comes from behind and stabs her, shoving the whole kitchen knife into her abdomen. Then Ryan unlocks the door to the basement and throws Sarah down in the basement while Alyssa is hiding near the stairs. He picks up Sarah's body, but while walking towards the garage, sees the broken door window and realizes that Alyssa has escaped and she is somewhere in the basement. He picks the knife he stabbed Sarah with and starts telling Alyssa that he wants her, but he needs Carrie Anne. While looking for her, Alyssa manages to make a sound and expose herself, and Ryan starts chasing her. Alyssa manages to get away from him and to find the cop's gun and starts shooting behind her, but Ryan isn't there. While Ryan is hiding, he sees the switch to the electricity and pulls it down, turning off the lights. Alyssa finds a half-broken flashlight that she tries to make it work by hitting it, but it's only working for a moment after each hit. Finally, when she manages to get it working, we see Ryan running towards her with the knife in his hand, and Alyssa shoots him. He is lying on the ground unmoving, and Alyssa decides to get near him to take the keys out of his pocket. That's when Ryan wakes up and catches Alyssa and starts overpowering her. Right at that moment Sarah comes with a hammer and hits him in the head. They both get up and run away. Next scene we are shown how Sarah is calling for Alyssa with the car horn, but Alyssa doesn't show up, so she goes to search for her. She finds her near the tree that Ryan showed her the face on the tree. She asks her mom if she sees anything, but she answers that she sees a tree. Finally, they leave. Next Ryan is shown in a psychiatric, doing a really big puzzle. We get a flashback, where we see his mother carrying a birthday card and saying make a wish Carrie Anne and Ryan answering back my name is not Carrie Anne it's Ryan. The mother slaps him hard across the face telling him, your name is Carrie Anne, and we see Ryan back in the psychiatric looking towards the camera, while we continue to hear your name is Carrie Anne being yelled by his parents. The movie ends and we are finally clearly told that the real Carrie Anne was never in the picture. Everything was done by Ryan. His parents were killed by him and not Carrie Anne. Knowing this, perhaps the initial scene with the feathers covered with blood doesn't signify the loss of innocence, but retribution for what was done to him. The first clip we see of Carrie Anne supposedly attacking Ryan was in fact the abducted girl trying to escape. If you look at her body you will notice that she didn't attack Ryan, but was trying to get past him. She was trying to reach for the door, but he caught her. Later when that same girl rushes towards Sarah and Alyssa house she was probably looking for help, and not to harm anyone. In fact, we can safely assume that, when she tried to open the door, that's when Ryan got to her, and pulled her down below the porch. Why she didn't scream still remains a mystery. Perhaps due to the drugs in her system, she was having difficulty talking, or perhaps her mentality was so utterly destroyed that she had completely lost her mind, and her attempt to escape was pure instinct. The second time when she picked a knife and rushed into the woods, she probably was again just trying to run away, and took the knife to defend herself. As for the second Carrie Anne, or Peggy Jones as her real name is, when Alyssa walked into the room and she attacked her, she didn't really attack her, but was asking for help. In fact, she asked for help twice, but it was muffled by the mouth restraint. What's more, there was obviously pleading in her eyes for help. Now why is her mouth restrained unlike the previous girl? I can only attribute that to the fact that Peggy hasn't gotten enough of the drugs in her system, or mentally she was still completely fine, so she was still able to speak properly, and that's why her mouth had to be restrained. Well guys, that sums up House at the End of the Street. Being advertised as a drama, horror, thriller, I believe that it hits all three. Well, the horror in the movie isn't its strong feature. I do believe that it's there, at least up to the point where we find out that Ryan is the one behind everything. Please don't forget to follow and subscribe to the channel and look forward to more videos.